This is a standard park bench. To the average human, it is a pleasant place to eat a tuna sandwich and contemplate life choices. To the avian community, it is a volatile, heavily fortified geopolitical chessboard where one wrong step means total economic collapse and literal starvation. Welcome to the park. For the past 3 months, the park has enjoyed what historians call a balance of power. On the west side, we have the statue flock. They are organized, bureaucratic, and they completely control the trade routes surrounding the local pretzel cart. On the east side, we have the fountain flock. They are aggressive, unpredictable, and they hold a tight monopoly over the high-yield hot dog stand. Neither flock actually likes the other. In fact, Gary, the leader of the fountain flock, personally thinks the statue flock smells like old pennies, but they don't fight. Why is that? Because of a little concept called deterrence. Fighting costs energy. If the statue flock launches a full-scale invasion of the hot dog stand, the commotion will alert the ultimate apex predator, a bored 6-year-old named Timmy who will chase them all away. Therefore, the cost of war is higher than the value of the hot dog crumbs. This is mutually assured destruction. But with more flapping, the peace is stable. The system works. Until the French fry incident. Behold the mega fry, left behind by an unsuspecting tourist. It is a dense, high-calorie, nuclear payload of carbohydrates. It is enough to feed an entire flock for a week. Suddenly, the balance of power is broken. If the statue flock gets the fry, their population explodes and they can dominate the park. If the fountain flock gets it, they take over the boardwalk. Neither side can let the other have it, but neither side wants to fight directly and risk Timmy's wrath. So what do global superpowers do when they want to fight, but don't want to get their own feathers dirty? They use a proxy. Meet Scrawny Pete. Pete doesn't belong to a flock. Pete lives in the buffer zone. He has a mild case of mites and zero political leverage. The statue flock approaches Pete with an offer. They tell Pete, "Hey buddy, if you walk over there and stand on that fry, we will give you all the crumbs you can eat for a week. Also, here is a tiny wooden stick to defend yourself with. Be sure not to let anyone else get to that fry." Meanwhile, the fountain flock sees this move and panics. They approach a different grass bird, Barnaby, and hand him a stale piece of popcorn to counter Pete. This is a proxy war. The elite flock sits comfortably on the air-conditioned park bench, whispering strategies, while Pete and Barnaby face off in the mud. The superpowers aren't losing any soldiers, but the grass is actively burning. As Pete and Barnaby stare each other down over the golden crust of the fry, they realize something. They don't actually hate each other. In fact, they share a mutual cousin named Irene. Pete whispers to Barnaby, "Look, if we both just calm down and cooperate, we can split this fry 50-50. We both eat, we don't get hurt, and we go home happy." This sounds like a flawless plan, but Pete is forgetting the fundamental rule of game theory, the prisoner's dilemma. Let's look at the math. If they both cooperate, they both get a score of +5 food. If Pete cooperates, but Barnaby betrays him and grabs the whole fry, Barnaby gets a +10, and Pete gets 0 and a broken beak. Because Pete cannot read Barnaby's mind, mostly because pigeon eyes face completely opposite directions and look at 2 different dimensions simultaneously, Pete has to assume the worst. Pete thinks, if Barnaby is going to betray me, I have to betray him first to protect myself. Barnaby is going through the exact same mental gymnastics. In a world governed by scarce resources and zero institutional trust, betrayal is the only logical choice. It is what economists call the Nash equilibrium. It is the smartest dumb decision you can make. Predictably, it's an absolute bloodbath. Pete pecks Barnaby's toe. Barnaby pulls Pete's tail feathers. But here's how localized conflicts turn into world wars. The chaos escalates. The statue flock sees Pete losing ground and thinks, our investment is failing. They send in 2 heavy-duty pigeons to back him up. The fountain flock sees this and declares a state of emergency, launching their entire airborne division. The treaty is dead. The balance of power is completely shattered. Pigeons are screaming, feathers are flying, pretzels are being trampled. It is a total, unmitigated systemic failure. The entire park economy grinds to a halt. because everyone is too busy fighting over the territory to actually look for new food. And while the two major superpowers are locked in a brutal, exhausting war of attrition, an outside variable enters the chat. Enter the seagull. The seagull doesn't care about the historical borders of the park bench. The seagull doesn't respect the prisoner's dilemma. The seagull doesn't even have a sophisticated economic model. He just has a massive beak, unending hunger, and absolutely zero moral boundaries. While the superpowers were wasting all their resources, health, and political capital fighting over the crumbs of the system, the true apex predator swooped in and took the entire market share. The war is over. Nobody won. The flocks are bankrupt. Scrawny Pete has no tail feathers, and the seagull is currently digesting their entire GDP on top of a dumpster. The moral of the story: before you engage in a costly geopolitical turf war over a dropped fry, make sure you aren't just setting the table for a guy who eats garbage for a living. Watch the skies and give us your breadcrumbs. Subscribe.